Hi, friends, and welcome to another YBT short, as we're calling it right now until I find a more clever name. Hi, welcome. And today, what I'm going to talk about is being reposted by Emily Simpson from Real Housewives of Orange County. So, for those of you who have listened to me since the beginning, you already kind of know my trajectory with this, but for those who are newer listeners, when I first started a year ago, which is so wild, I've only been doing this a year. I was doing well. My Instagram account, I had 4,000 followers, something like that. I was growing and gaining traction, and it was exciting. And then one day, Kyle Richards reposted me. And not only did she repost me, she said, "This person, what they said about this is correct," which I still cannot get over. She said, and that day, that she posted that, so not only did I get 4,000 followers overnight, which was wild and overwhelming, I also was picked up by some magazines, and then I was contacted by a journalist from the New York Times to give a quote about Mauricio and Kyle, last year back when this was all a scandal. So that was a wild experience, and since then, I've continued to grow, and I'm just so grateful for all of you. And then so the other day, I always watch and always have watched Real Housewives of Orange County, and I've always covered that. And so when I'm covering things on my podcast, sometimes what I'll do is for Instagram, I can't, when I talk to you and I'm speaking to you, this is very hard to put in static terms that I can post on a social media platform. I can't do 20-minute clips. I can't explain myself. So I have to be succinct in my words. And so what I end up doing is slides. And so I do slides. I post those slides on Instagram, but then what I've been doing is talking about them in my podcast so I can elaborate, I can, speak to that. And so a couple of my slides I posted last week after the most recent episode of Real Housewives of Orange County, and lo and behold, Emily Simpson reposted what I said, and she circled it and said, "Yes, yes, yes." And so I wanted to share not only that exciting bit with you all, because, here's the thing. I don't really care about celebrity, but people who I legitimately admire, Kyle and Emily are two of those for sure. There are some housewives who, if they even tried to talk to me, I'd be like, nah. But these two, I really admire them, and I really just felt so warm and validated that, it's good to know that I still got it. Sometimes after depression and health issues and cancer and all this other stuff, sometimes, I feel like, am I still a smart person? Do I still know, can I still do this? Can I still do that? And so, I share that just because that's part of my humanity. I don't like admitting that. I don't love sharing that, but there it is. And so, when Emily reposted me, I just felt like, wow, really validated and excited. So I'm going to share with you what I posted and what really resonated with her. And for more, please go check me out at Your Bish Therapist on Instagram. I do have some high profile folks who follow me outside of the show, outside of Bravo. It's just like weird and random. Angelina from Jersey Shore follows me. Jen Arnold from The Little Couple follows me, who, by the way, I love. And if you have not watched that, you are definitely missing out. Tammy Pescatelli, of course, had her on the podcast. But anyway, so it's just weird. Parasocial relationships for me are weird, right? People are having parasocial relationships with me right now, and then I'm having them with other people and they're having them. And it's just like this link in a chain of, humans looking up to other humans. And then we're all just human, though, which is what I'm here to say. And I am wearing my I Am Human brand sweatshirt right now. So, anyway. All right. So, here's what I said about Emily that led her to repost me. I said Emily versus Heather. It's not. So, this is about, by the way, the episode where Heather and Emily fought about the dress and the size, and then Heather made some comments about the dress that Emily was wearing. It's not about the dress. It's about Emily's underlying self-esteem issues as a result of living in a world where she's told her body is outside the norm. According to the CDC, the average weight for women in the US is 170 pounds, and I guarantee you in the OC that number is vastly different. Vastly different. I'm sure in the OC that weight would be considered obese, which I can't. I weigh more than that. I'll tell you right now. I definitely weigh more than that. And I don't give a hoot about it. Let me tell you what. Love me, and I love my body, and I love my curves, and I don't care about the number. So from me to you, I hope you all take that in. Emily feels isolated and different because the other cast members have thin privilege and therefore will never understand her experience. This makes her feel more isolated, and it becomes a vicious cycle. So let me explain thin privilege. By the way, thin privilege is very real. I have talked to my own therapist about this. So I never specialized in disordered eating, but my therapist does. And we have talked about this multiple times. And so thin privilege is related to weight bias, and it stems from the unrealistic ideal for a preferred thin body type. It espouses that those with a thin body type have more advantages than those do not. And so that's just real. Those are just facts. People may not like it. People may say, it's a cop out, whatever, but that's true. In my life, due to medical issues, I have weighed 80 pounds and I have weighed 200 pounds. And both were because of medical issues that it was beyond my control. The first time when I weighed 80 pounds, when I had cancer when I was 17, I was told I was dying. I looked like I was dying. I was emaciated. I'm 5'8". So 5'8", 80 pounds is ridiculous. And then, as I grew and I got healthier and I recovered from that and I became an adult, my weight fluctuated. My body, one day I woke up and my hips were wider and my shorts didn't fit me. I'm not joking. And, being menopausal, but being young, it's just done a number on my body. And then when I was, maybe this was about 10 years ago now, my thyroid stopped working, and all of the male doctors that I saw gaslit me. My number was a 6. My blood test value was a 6. And when I feel good and when my thyroid is treated properly, I feel best at a 0.5 to a 1. So that just tells you where the medical system fails women. I was being told, well, a 6 is fine. This is normal. And I was rapidly gaining weight, which I didn't care necessarily about what I looked like. I just felt like an alien in my body. It was just so weird and it felt so uncomfortable. And so finally, I had a female doctor listen to me, take me seriously, change my life, put me on thyroid meds. I have an endocrinologist now because my thyroid is massively uncontrolled. I'll gain weight, I'll lose it in a week. It's been very hard. And so my point is that all of our bodies are different, and all bodies deserve love and worth and are worthy. And the part that Heather doesn't understand is she has been extremely thin her whole life. I mean, I don't think people listening to this, some people understand this, some people don't. How thin you have to be to look like Heather Dubrow looks on TV in real life. Okay. And so I'm not taking her inventory. I'm not making any accusations or saying anything, but Heather has no concept of what it means to not have your body be societally accepted. She has absolutely no clue what that's like. So this is the part that Emily reposted. The second part specifically, but Heather initially listened and apologized, but she was missing the point about what was upsetting Emily. Emily wanted to be heard, and although she was making it about Heather, if Heather would have put down her defenses, it would have allowed for a more productive conversation. Emily is a sensitive soul, and no one was able to recognize the emotion underneath the outburst. But instead, Heather gets defensive, makes a comment in a talking head that absolutely blew my mind. This is what Emily circled. Commenting, and I have news for you, the dress was tight on Emily, was unnecessary unnecessary and cruel. I think fundamentally, Emily knows she's not crazy for feeling different, while the other ladies are acting confused, but it's a good example of don't lecture someone who needs a hug. And so it's, for those, Emily and Gina have a real relationship. And so remember when Emily and Gina were fighting on the tennis court and, Gina was just like walking away and storming off and losing it. And Emily just gave her a hug and they cried and they talked about it. And so this is a good example of how Heather can't be that friend. Heather can't be that friend who says, listen, you're yelling and you're acting like a real asshole right now, but I know it's because you're hurt. So let's hug it out. Let's talk about it. And you're being so rude, but like, I love you. And let's work through this. Heather's not capable. So Heather immediately gets defensive and starts taking this route where she pretends like she has no idea what Emily's talking about. Okay. And so the pretending for me is a real problem. Let's not pretend that we don't know what Heather does. Okay. And so not Gina, I'm sorry. Emily felt different, and it was a situation that it was a feeling, not necessarily a fact. In terms of Heather, it wasn't her goal to make her feel like that. But when we have someone telling us this is how I felt, we have two choices. We can get defensive and say, well, that's not my problem. That's a you problem. Or we can say, wow, I had no idea that that's how you felt. I'm so sorry. That was not my intention. Not, I'm so sorry you feel that way, which is Heather's most favorite apology, the housewife's apology. I'm sorry you feel that way is not an apology. It's not. So here's the thing. Emily was wrong. I think she gets hurt, she gets wounded, she yells, she, acts out. But if you just look at that and say this is because she's hurting and she's, Emily is not an unreasonable person. She can take accountability. Like with, people on my Instagram kept saying, well, Emily doesn't deserve compassion because of what she did to Jen. And here's the thing. This is what people online do that I just can't support, which is comparing apples and oranges. So, like saying, well, Emily doesn't deserve compassion because she was mean to Jen. Listen, if we do that with everything, then no one deserves compassion because no one's a perfect human. Everyone on this cast acts out. Everyone is accountable for their behavior. I'm not saying Emily isn't. I'm explaining the stuff behind her behavior as evidenced by the fact that she reposted it. And obviously what I said, hit a vibe for her. She was like, yeah, I know, whatever. So my point is that I think, I like Heather, but the problem is her selectivity, that's not a word. Her being selective about her choice of inclusivity bothers me. She can do it for her kids, but she can't do it for her friends. And so like body inclusivity is a huge part of being an ally. And so I'm confused about how she picks and chooses where to use that, and that just feels a little incongruent for me and inconsistent. That's what I'll say. So Emily did DM me privately. I'm not going to share what we talked about because I just don't believe in that. But she's lovely, and I know she appreciated my words, and so whoever thought that I would be providing validation for people, for housewives? My gosh, I had no idea. So, one last thing I will say, the last thing that I posted was it said one last note, extended childhood trauma can lead people to take old feelings and apply them to current scenarios. While Emily is justified in her feelings, she can overgeneralize. Some of these feelings are residual from not feeling good enough in childhood. So she does overgeneralize and she applies them to current situations. But guess who else does that? Me. And guess who else does that? Every survivor of complex PTSD that I've ever experienced, right? And so I think that's why I can have grace for her, because I've done that. I've seen that. I've seen myself do that before. And when you're in it, your brain is hijacked and it's hard to see the forest for the trees. And then the last thing I said was, I'm so tired of talking about Alexis, but she absolutely inserted herself into the situation because she is swimming in victimhood and self-pity, and she was too blind to see that none of this is even about her. But Alexis is a professional at inserting herself into issues that don't involve her, so I would expect nothing less. And Gina was right. Alexis and John dive into chaos, and that's a them problem. So thank you so much for listening to this YBT short. And I can't wait to bring you many more. Until next time, please take care of yourselves and each other. Ta-ta for now. Disclaimer. Posts are not intended to diagnose, treat, or provide medical advice. Your Bish Therapist is for entertainment and informational purposes only. The podcast, my opinions, and posts are my own and not associated with past or present employers, any organizations, Bravo TV, Greyheart Productions, or any other television network. The information in YBT podcast and on its social media is provided for general informational purposes only and is not intended to diagnose or treat. Please do not act or refrain from acting based on anything you read, see, or hear on YBT podcast or associated social media. Communicating with YBT via email and or social media does not form a therapeutic alliance. Melissa, operator of YBT, is unable to provide any therapeutic advice, treatment, or feedback.